This is actually a C file. I wanted to record some observations here. Um, C++ is, different than other languages like BASIC in the sense that, like, if you wanted to draw graphics routines on it, the compiler takes care of that for the specific system you're on. Whereas in C, if you want to draw things in graphics, you got to rely on either a library that's already built, or you got to make your own library but the library is written in C. So because C has access using the basic methods I've been learning, to the hardware on a low level, so low enough level to where it can, if you're on a system that you don't have a library for, you can create your own and write it in C and access it with the methods and classes and stuff that you create to do so. So, but that makes C hardware independent because of the fact fundamentally, um, just because of that fact that you but that's why you don't see any books on C that really talk a lot about graphics routines or anything like that, because C has no graphic routines built into it like Visual Basic does. Like you got line commands and point sets and p sets and the ability to sample the colors and things like that, but you don't have that in C. So in C, like on Windows, you're going to have to use the Windows APIs or whatever, or the common controls or whatnot, or the .NET architecture, as the case may be, to access things like graphic methods and so forth. But C doesn't have any of that built into it. So that's kind of why it's taught this way. It's because there are no graphics in it. And that's all hardware independent or platform dependent. So you're programming in Linux, you're going to use different methods and libraries than you would in Windows or operating system X or whatever, or DOS. So but that's kind of how it works. So, but classes and so forth are the way to communicate too, because classes are are like they're like a function that has access to the member variables directly. They're like a function with the function, you can declare static keywords, when you're defining a variable in a function, so the data is persistent, but still you got to go through the common parameter entry interface of the function, to modify any of those variables. You can't access them directly. But in class, it's just like it's like a function where you can actually access its members, its public members anyway, anywhere you want, and it's like a data structure, like using a struct command, in the sense that you can access its member variables directly, but you can't have private and public versions of it. So it's just, but that's how computers work these days. It's all class language. So if you can't speak class language, you can't read any of those programs. That's kind of the logic behind it, and it is a little better than a function in that sense, except there's a lot of overhead, especially in C, because the compilers are stupid. They that's why you got to go declare all these prototypes and everything. That's the overhead to it. It's a little silly in a way, but they did that originally because they wanted to publish part of the a program, how you access the class methods and so forth. You can do that in a header while still keeping your class functions compiled separately, in a pre-compiled format, for example. So people can't really see how your functions work, but they can see what your interface is to it. So, but when you're doing OCXs in Visual Basic, essentially you're creating a class, because you had your interface to that class that you had to lay out, which is your public interface, but the OCX itself would have its own private variables inside of it that weren't accessible by the public, and of course it did something, so it had its own methods. So that were either public or private depending on how you wanted to set up your interface. So, but that's what C does. Its public section is you're setting up in a class, you're setting up its public interface. So which can include public member functions, public properties, etc., so that you can access. I'm sure you could even include structures in that if you wanted to for some reason. But but that's just kind of the gist of how C works. So and how almost all programming languages, even Visual Basic, work these days. Visual Basic use classes too. You could mess with that if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. Um, so anyway, that's why I never really got into it, because I never really saw the value in trying to figure all that shit out. But anyway.